I know I talk about addiction, but I want it to be clear that everyone has some sort of an addiction by the definition. So the definition that I give, which is very similar to Dr. Gabor Maté's definition, it's any repeated behavior that provides some kind of immediate relief, pain relief, but in the long term causes a lot of pain, suffering, and problems. Basically, problems in health, wealth, love, and happiness. So, to keep it short, I'd say the definition is any repeated behavior that creates a sense of pain relief short term, but creates entropy long term. So, entropy is a loss of energy within any given system, the dissipation of energy within any given system. And that applies to health, wealth, love, and happiness. So by that definition, what it really describes is a bad habit. And so there's a lot of people who shun away from listening or hearing about addiction, not realizing that their own pattern of repetitive behavior that they cannot stop, which is a bad habit, is what is in the way of them truly accessing their higher potential, actualizing, self-actualization. And I realized that there is basically two forces of nature, which is, it's a law of entropy, really, that every system in nature, every system, every single thing that exists eventually breaks down and fades away. And it's tied to that law of impermanence, that everything is impermanent. Every system fails eventually. Every system goes out of balance eventually. Every battery dies. Every leaf falls. Every tree dies and rots and breaks down, but it's just a part of nature. So I think the real key understanding here is that there is a balance to understand, that we cannot escape entropy. We cannot escape that things are going to go out of order, that we are going to eventually lose energy within any given system, whether it's our body, whether it's the way we are doing things in life. But the real difference between, I want to say, a bad habit or an addictive behavior and the opposite of entropy, which Richard Rudd calls syntropy or also centropy, where the energy within any given system is exponentially increasing and working together in harmony. There is order. So that's the opposite of entropy. That's the opposite of what an addictive behavior creates. So the real key thing to understand is that because this entropy is a law of nature, you're really playing a game of, can you at least lean more into the law of syntropy, where everything is working together in harmony more than it is breaking down? Because the second that we start letting go, and I forget who says this, but they say it's so much easier to fall into disorder than it is to create order. It's so much easier to just let things go into entropy than it is to create syntropy. There is actual effort and intention and thoughtfulness and planning and intelligence that is required to create syntropy. There's an actual development of our soul. There's a development of our mental, emotional, physical capacity when we create syntropy. There is an actual growth that happens. There's an actual leveling up, you could say, that happens when we create syntropy. And that is kind of like the real purpose to our existence here, is to develop, to grow, to learn, to understand. And we have the potential to create syntropy in our life, but it takes effort and it takes a willingness to grow. But what I realize is at the root of these things, for people and myself included, the times that I've just kind of lived in entropy, and entropy leads to rock bottom. Entropy leads to your dark night of the soul, which is all on divine purpose too, because that's what wakes you up to understand now it's time to create syntropy. It's time to create something that works. But I realized that what really stunts our development or even distorts our mental, emotional, physical development that leads to these addictive behaviors is unmet needs. And there are 3 primary deep human needs that I realize that we have. And if we're not meeting these deep human needs, if we never got them met from when we were babies, children, teens, even just growing up, our very critical developmental years, if we never got it, which I'd say most of society hasn't, most of the culture in the world has not gotten these deep human needs met. And it goes alongside with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But I noticed that what happens is we create these distortions and we develop these addictive, repetitive behaviors that are trying to fill that void, that need, that are trying to substitute what we never got as children. And the ironic thing is, in order to meet those needs, we have to face this chasm of fear. It's like not getting those needs met when we were children and teens and our developmental years. We create these stories about our needs and these narratives and this negative self-talk about ourselves, why we're not good enough, why that's not safe, why we can't go there. But in actuality, we never experienced getting our needs. And so we create this distortion which really stunts our development. It stunts our mental, emotional development, which is why sometimes you can try and reason with certain people, but people who have this neurotic anxiety because of trauma, there's no reasoning. The development has not happened. There was a distortion in the development. There's a stunted development and impairment. And so in order for us to meet our own needs, we actually have to cross this chasm of fear. We have to cross and go through what we call the valley of the shadow of death. And we have to let go and shed these beliefs that we think keep us unsafe, when in actuality, on the other side of that is actually our deep need. And I think when we start to understand what our really deep human fundamental need is, I'm just gonna go say these 3, and it's kind of building off of Dr. Gabor Maté's 2 primary needs. And it also overlays and somewhat matches Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But Dr. Gabor Maté, he says our 2 primary needs are authenticity and attachment. And as I started to meditate on this, I realized that we actually have 3 human primary needs. And it is in alignment with Dr. Gabor Maté's. And I would say that it's authenticity. Dr. Gabor Maté also says that it's attachment. So those are his 2, right? The 2 primary fundamental needs that we need as human beings since we're born, in order for us to develop in a very healthy way, in a way where we can grow in syntropy, in a way where we can really become all that we were meant to be, where we're not losing energy. We're not losing energy on these subconscious thoughts of fear and scarcity and insecurity. We're not losing energy. We're not trying to, keep that narrative alive and drain ourselves and exhaust ourselves. But I would say, for me, with the 3rd primary need is Arcadia. And Arcadia is a deep sense of harmony with nature. or God. And I want to be clear that when I say God, I'm not saying it in reference to just some daddy in the sky. I'm actually referring to all of creation and the way creation works and the laws that are creating the harmony of creation. And I'm not saying that it's black and white and that we need to know all these laws, because there is always a gray area, there's always a mystery to creation. But in general, when I say Arcadia, I'm talking about a deep harmony with nature, a deep harmony with the nature of our body, with the harmony of the nature around us. So really understanding how to align with that is a deep, deep need. And most all of us never got that growing up in this world. We grew up in a world where the food system is ass backwards, where the water is polluted, where we have to pay for clean water. Unless you're lucky enough to live near a fresh spring. But for the most part, most of our waters have been polluted. There's microplastics, the air is being sprayed with all kinds of shit, the soil is depleted. So we grew up in this system where we're so disconnected from nature. So already that need has not been met. And then when you go to authenticity is the ability to truly express who we really want to be, to express our emotions when we're angry, when we're sad, when we don't feel right. But because it's been passed down so long to suppress certain things like anger, sadness, they build up. And when it does come out, it comes out in a very unhealthy way. It creates neurosis. So all of these things that are suppressing our emotions, suppressing what we truly feel and how we really want to live in the world. Let's say you wanted to be an astronaut when you were a child, right? But you were forced to be something else. Or let's say you wanted to be an artist. Let's say you wanted to be an artist when you grew up, but your parents always told you that there's no money in that. And so you forced yourself to go and do something else. That is a suppression of our authenticity, and it's culturally pressed upon us. So that need doesn't get met. And then attachment, which Dr. Gabor Maté is really referring to, is like a real deep sense of love by our caregivers, because we're so vulnerable as children, as toddlers, as babies. And most of us don't get that because our parents never got that in some way, shape, or form. Maybe we get it from one parent, or maybe we got it sometimes, but I'm talking about consistency. Like we never got that. So really what I wanted to say about the three fundamental primary needs of being human for me has been authenticity, attunement rather than attachment. To me, attunement is the healthy way to attach to a human being, where there is harmony in relationship, where we are heard, we're seen, and we're valued consistently. So that's attunement. So authenticity, attunement, and then Arcadia. And then these are the three fundamental primary needs that I realize every human being is craving. We all need this. And the very few human beings who got this as a child grew up in a world of mostly syntropy growing up. From my own experience and people that I've known, there are rare exceptions. But I'm not saying this to make you feel hopeless, because the real journey is learning how to meet our own needs as adults. And this is like our hero's journey. This is where it requires you to accept responsibility. It requires you to admit what kind of addictive behavior or bad habit you have. It requires you to address the cognitive dissonance in yourself. Like, no one else can do it for you. No one else can tell you. I mean, sometimes it does take other people to intervene and tell you what it is that you're doing that is destroying your life. But, it doesn't really take effect till we can admit it to ourselves, where we can be totally honest. So I just wanted to say that, and I hope that helps some of you, because really underneath all of the addictive behavior, the bad habits, is neurosis. And neurosis develops because we are suppressing those needs. We're suppressing the ability to be authentic, to say what we really want to say. Let's say, you don't want to do something, but you say, yes, okay, I'll do it. But really inside you're like, no, fuck, I don't want to do that shit. That's a suppression of who you are, of your authenticity. And then also not having that consistent, healthy relationship where you're seen, heard, and valued consistently. That's another big one. When we don't have that, we turn to things that feel like safe love, that give us a dopamine rush of pleasure, but we're not getting that deep connection, which is why we don't truly develop, why we don't truly level up the way we want to level up, because we're stunting ourselves when we're choosing the things that really actually just numb us, the addictive behaviors, the addictions, the bad habits, because that actually keeps us stunted. It doesn't help us evolve and grow. But again, like I said, in order for us to start meeting our own needs, we have to dip our toe into the unknown. We have to dip our toes into that chasm of fear, that valley of the shadow of death. And we have to kind of get used to it. We have to kind of disprove it to ourselves that we're actually safe, because we've been taught since we were children and teens or whatever, from the trauma and the suppression of those needs or not getting those needs met, we're taught that it's not safe to try and have those needs met. To be authentic, it wasn't safe. To say what I really wanted to say, it wasn't safe. To express my sadness, to express my anger, it wasn't safe. Like I got lick-ins or whatever it was, and then again, not being taught how to be in harmony with nature, not knowing our bodies, not knowing what our liver needs. We're in this world where we're just constantly bombarding our liver with all kinds of toxins, and we don't even know it. That's why there's some people, they're so on fire for God, but they have no idea about these needs, and then they get cancer, and then they get, you know what I'm saying? Or they're in this really toxic, abusive relationship, yet they say they're on fire for God, but they don't understand why their life is a living hell. It's because these three needs are not being met. So that's why I wanted to be really clear that yes, I'm a very deep spiritual person, and I have a great, great reverence and relationship to source of creation, which other people call God. But I want to be clear that you can't just wish your way out of this. All right, I hope that helps. All right, peace.